Hello everyone, I'm Lex Chase, and if you notice something different about me, well, Mackie does. Mackie remembers me for my epic hair. It's kind of this blonde, black, Crayola red color, like that lamp over there. So here we go. Observe, surprise, the author in her natural habitat. Look, there's still some blonde on there. So if you don't mind, I'm traveling incognito, and I actually do wear these all the time. I have a vast collection of ball caps, so I'm going to cover up my awful, terrible gray. And actually, this is how I look in everyday life. Shocker, right? Anyway, let's start again. Hello, I'm Lex Chase, and I'm the author of Bayou Fairy Tale for Dreamspinner Press. It is the long-awaited sequel to Americana Fairy Tale and Book 2 in the Screw Up Princess and Skillful Huntsman trilogy. A little bit about the series. It is the tale of fairy tale princess Dude Taylor Hatfield, who's a complete fuck-up of a human being, and his true love, the jackass huntsman Quentin Devereaux, who is just a horrible human being in every possible way, and I love him so. And they are on a road trip to save the world. How can they possibly screw it up? Not at all, right? None. No idea. You never know. So Mackie asked me along to share a bit of Bayou here today. So here we go. Bayou takes place 2 years after Taylor and Quentin have met and fallen in love, and they have since settled into a quiet little peaceful life in Sullivan, Maine, away from magic, witches, and stuffy traditions. Totally normal, totally just posing as some good old Southern boys among the Yankees. Yankee pride, am I right? So, anyway. So the thing is, they've settled in this little life, but have they really? So here we go. A little bit I'm sharing today is about Quentin. Quentin fears he's actually settled and he's gone soft. But here's a problem with Quentin. Quentin is under a curse to lose his memory every 7 days. And how he keeps track of everything is by recording every single detail of his life in a monstrous journal. Here's the deal. Only his journals, there are multiple ones of them, only hold so much information about his life. So when he finishes one and starts a new one, what happens to those old memories? What happens to him, and where does his past go? So this is Quentin's problem, and I hope you enjoyed this bit from Chapter 5. Here we go. Hold on for the ride. Of all the 4 traffic lights in Ellsworth, you forget the difference between green and red, Quentin grumbled at the puttering neon in front of him. He leaned back in the driver's seat of the truck and dropped his left arm out the window. The neon timidly crept into traffic. Go! Move! There's a gas pedal there, Granny. The sun turned the Chevy interior into an oven. Quentin rolled his wrist, working out the crinkle and pop of bones. He lazily soaked up the heat like a sleepy lizard. His jeans were another matter. At least Ramona was nice enough to loan him some extra towels to line the seats. He couldn't afford to mess up the Chevy. As the neon scooted on, Quentin let off the brake and the truck coasted. He ran his hand over the warm leatherette of the steering wheel. The bumps and ridges struck him with an odd unfamiliarity. The off feeling tingled in the back of his mind. He shook his head. This is my truck, he repeated as if he convinced himself. His slow, meditative strokes held him in the present, in this moment. He was here, in this place, this moment, this truck. The truck was perfect. What could be wrong? He frowned and considered Ramona's check tucked in the cup holder. She had paid him double this time, and not only was it a considerable sum the first time around, but he and Taylor could go far with the extra money. He scratched his hairline and then pulled the tie off his short ponytail. He stared straight ahead at the trees, but into a place in his head. Maybe he could go back to the enchanted forest inside his mind and find a place of comfort, away from all of this perfection. The truck was a Chevy. He hated Chevys, or so he thought. The shiny black paint shone like an obsidian arrowhead as he drove down Route 1. The seats grew warm against his aching back. Seat warmers. He snorted with half-hearted derision. No tattered, well-worn, lumpy seats with splits at the seams. The driver's seat wasn't even old enough to mold to his body. He halted at a stoplight and watched the sky stretch out well into forever. One could see the mountains from here, every star when the night fell, every sunrise and sunset, no matter where he was. The leaves smelled of new growth, fresh, crisp, and herbaceous. Even in the mundane world of Maine, the forest painted across the landscape with intense, verdant strokes. The light turned green, and the poor Neon, which desperately needed to be junked, coughed exhaust and puttered along in front of him. He drummed his fingers of his left hand on the driver's side doorframe. According to the position of the sun, it was going on 2 p.m. Taylor would be home soon. Quentin would lure him into a hike down the trails behind their property. Do the little things that couples did. The picture-perfect Norman Rockwell shit that couples did. The idea left a sourness in his mouth. Perfect. There was that thought again. Did he enjoy it? He swapped hands on the wheel and grabbed his cold coffee from the center cup holder. He rolled the thought over in his mind as he sipped. The bitter, burned garbage Dunkin' Donuts called coffee insulted him. Unless he special ordered it, his beloved community coffee was a thing of the past. He made do. It wasn't that much of a big deal, save suffering through the swill. He'd get accustomed to it someday. That someday was a long time coming. He'd reincarnate sooner than he'd fall in love with another brand. His temples throbbed as a headache took root deep in his sinuses. The truth glared at him, just like the annoying reflection from the neon's back windshield stabbing into his eyes. Quentin had settled. The steering wheel creaked under his tightening grip. He'd settled for a quiet little life with coffee he despised. He settled for being the eye candy of hot and bothered housewives everywhere. He settled for playing by the rules of the mundane world. He didn't settle for Taylor. That was certain. Taylor was a goal at the end of an impossible quest. Taylor was a light he needed when he couldn't see it. They found each other when neither was looking. They were the least they'd suspect, yet perfection together. Perfection. There was that word again. The little neon turned on its blinker a mile before the upcoming turn, as if making sure Quentin wouldn't dare mash the car into pace with his Chevy Colorado. "What are you doing?" he asked the neon, as if the driver could hear him. But he knew who he was really talking to. "What are you doing?" he asked himself. He pulled off onto an overlook before he could discover the goal of the neon's quest. He popped the door open with one hand and scooped up his messenger bag with the other. His monstrous journal pulled on the D-rings of the shoulder strap. The jewel blue bay spread out before him. Rolling purple hillsides slithered like a sleeping dragon in the horizon, protecting his treasures. Quentin smirked. Sleeping Dragon. He knew that name well. Everywhere he looked, he saw Taylor in everything. He took a seat on the flat granite barrier. A cool wind streaked through his damp hair, smelling of salt, seaweed, and lobsters steaming down the road at Dunbar's. He pulled out his Frankenstein creation of a journal and cradled it like a 20-pound newborn. Only he was the newborn, and the journal was a proud parent who welcomed him back into the world every Tuesday without fail. The journal greeted him like a familiar friend, unlike the truck, which was a new friend he wasn't sure about. It stayed sealed with a bungee cord, making a valiant attempt at holding a mishmash of photographs, receipts, post-its, pamphlets, Ziploc baggies, and tabs of every color and style. Hundreds of tabs. It was an attempt at keeping things organized, a hint of either a quick guide of where to look up an answer or something marking a trait. Blue was for personal history. Green was for money matters. Yellow was for traveling. Red was for Taylor. There were many red tabs. He ran his finger over the cover and traced the edges of the silly layers of stickers on the cover. A white cat with a red bow on one ear winked at him. "Hello, Kitty," he said out loud as he read his own handwriting on the sticker. "From Ringo," he read as it explained why he had a silly girlish cat. A bumper sticker wrapped in the front from front to back emblazoned with the word "Boy Mom." He squinted at the half-rubbed-off ballpoint pen writing, but pieced it together from the indentations on the sticker. "Taylor's shirt?" he said, uncertain. He didn't have much to go on more than that. A vine of scratch-and-sniff rose stickers crept up the spine. He gave in and scraped with his fingernail and took a whiff. It didn't smell like much anymore, but he smiled at the note on it. "Briar Rose," he said, and the warmth felt his chest. Despite the rampant femininity, the journal was maintained by people who cared. He thought highly enough about Taylor to decorate the cover and wanted to remember every part of him. From his annoying smirk, when he was being a little shit, to the 3 tiny moles on his right shoulder blade, Quentin's favorite place to kiss. What are you doing? He asked himself once more as he watched the light chop at the bay. The tide was going out soon, and by morning the clam diggers would be working the mudflats. No more secrets, he vowed, and cracked open the journal. A pen slipped from the pages and bounced off his knee and tumbled in the pebbles and sand collecting under his foot. He grunted and scooped it up, and then clicked it a couple times to clear the debris from the mechanism. He flipped open the blue tab section and skimmed for a blank space. The header of one page seemed the best he could do. If his handwriting was any indication, he was a master of writing not only microscopic level, but fitting letters within letters, and sentences between lines. The thick fog of gloom came again. With a few meditative circular markings in the corner of the page, he considered what to say. The happiness vanished like a smothered fire, leaving only with traces of sentimentality. He looked up at the truck. The gold Chevy cross winked at him from the afternoon light. He hated the truck. He hated simplicity. The scribbles flew fast and free, unhindered as hindbrace screeched and the voice locked away. It was a panicked man he kept trapped in the rabbit hole. If he didn't escape, Quentin wouldn't have to think about him. His fears wouldn't come true. He wouldn't have to write them down and face them every Tuesday. His pen stopped. The subconscious told him to hesitate. Think carefully of what he'd write next. If he did, there was no going back. It would be there, in purple ink, in a sea of blue letters, like a raft of stitched-together fears afloat with memories of sameness, mundanity. He wrote anyway. He hated the mundane. He longed for parts of himself he knew were somewhere but couldn't find. He was a complete clean slate every Tuesday. There were fragments, whispers of who he was. Whispers faded over time, but he needed them. He needed to know. Who was the huntsman that had gone soft? Soft? He questioned himself. The word was like an accusation of a crime he knew he committed. He had gone soft, stagnant. He missed his self-sufficiency. He underlined that. It was easier when he could cope with his own curse, when Taylor didn't have to care for him, when he didn't have to be reminded every day he was what? Self-loathing took him by the heart with its spiny claws and snarled at the back of his throat. He slammed the journal to the ground. The thing hit the asphalt like a concrete block without a bounce. His journal told him about his bad weeks, and this is how it started. He ran his hand through his hair and jerked at the roots, an old anxious habit he unconsciously maintained. I'm what? He scowled at the book as if it would come to life and speak to him. Stranger things had happened. Taylor had a dragon for a soul, after all, who had a fondness for exploding microwaves. I'm what, huh? He spat at the ground and pointed an accusing finger at the journal. Why don't you tell me? Silence. Of course, his journal wouldn't answer. He had to write the answers in it himself. If he didn't admit it, if he didn't write it down, it wouldn't be true. The man struggling to get out of the rabbit hole could stay there. He could learn to be the man in the enchanted forest again. He liked that one. The confidence, the power, the belief he was capable of anything. The belief he could take care of Taylor. But it was the other way around. No. He shook his head and his hand trembled. The magic of the journal beckoned him closer, tempting him to write down the truth. The answer of the twin in the enchanted forest would tell him next week. No! He spun on his heel. He struck the pen over the cliffside of the bay below. Satisfaction and peace cooled his anger as the pen made a soft plink into the water. That solved the issue. Life would go on as normal. He and Taylor would have a good week, full of love, laughter, and the joy that came without complication of magic, witches, and stuffy traditions, as Taylor always said. Life on their terms. They were a team, and Ringo and Honeysuckle were happy additions to their household. They had a home. Quentin had a steady job. Taylor found peace that he needed. Perfection. Quentin would settle for perfection. He would settle for coffee he hated, the truck he flip-flopped between taking back to the dealership or keeping. He snatched his journal from the ground and gave it a small toss like a child. The wind greeted him again. The fires of his freedom burnt once more inside him. Freedom smelled of fresh starts. The sky stretched on into forever, promising a bright future. Turning to grab his messenger bag from the granite barrier, his denial cracked into his skull. The pen stood on the center barrier by the nib. His journal demanded answers, and he wouldn't take Quentin's refusal once more. No, his voice trembled. Please. The pen taunted him, reminded him of what he must. The curse must be obeyed, no matter how high the cost. His freedom ripped away from his fingers. If he could get in the truck and drive away, leave the pen behind, he wouldn't have to. But there would be other pens. There would always be other pens. And the journal would not be satisfied until it collected Quentin's thoughts. He would destroy himself. He would rewrite his own history, erase his past, become someone new every week until the person he was a year ago is not the same man at all. A year from now, he wouldn't remember this moment of conflict, yearning for something he had long denied himself, something he didn't know he was denying himself. It was a missing piece, a hope it would all come together. A year from now, he wouldn't give it a second thought. He would be settled. He would love the shitty coffee. He'd love his truck. In fact, the truck would be immaculate. Not a single speck of dirt or a coffee cup on the floorboards. Hell, he'd wash it regularly. He'd get it detailed. He wouldn't give another thought to the old junk heap Ford. He wouldn't even remember the day Philippa died in it. Before he knew it, the pen was in his hand and he was sitting on the barrier. His page was open and his pen was on the paper. I hate being fragile, he said out loud as he wrote. He swallowed. You are fragile, the journal parroted back to him. I am fragile, he repeated the words as he ran his fingers over them. The journal was satisfied, and he trapped the magic within the pages with the bungee cord. With a moment of mournful ceremony, he slipped it back in the messenger bag and back on the passenger seat. He circled the truck's driver's side and looked out over the crystalline bay once again. Why can't you be simple, Henri? He asked himself. With a flick of the wrist, he popped the door open with a heavy clunk and the silent coasting of well-oiled joints. Nothing like the shrill squeaks of sticking joints of the Ford. He would force himself to like the Chevy, and in time, his journal had anything to say about it, he'd love it. He'd even want another one. He snorted. Don't get ahead of yourself, fuckwit. As he stepped in the truck, he settled in the driver's seat. A giant white and green and purple streak screeched across the overlook. Quentin shielded his eyes from the cloud of dust and blinked through the haze. A FedEx truck? He asked as the boxy truck fishtailed over the overlook. The truck had lost traction and stopped a full inch from the granite barrier. He whistled as the driver hopped out of the truck and balanced on the barrier like it was all routine. Quentin shot the Chevy and hustled to the open passenger side door of the delivery truck. The driver dug through the deliveries in the back. Was he checking on their safety? Are you okay? Quentin called. Yeah, the driver said. I'm good. After another few thumps of boxes, the driver emerged holding a large white and blue flat rate postal box. He scanned the package with his tablet and quietly waited for the record to process. Quentin arched a brow. What the fuck? The driver considered his tablet and studied Quentin's face. You really okay? Quentin asked again. This time he wasn't so sure if he was making up the FedEx truck or not. Then again, magic was everywhere. Henri Quentin Devereaux? The driver asked. Got a package for you. Wait, what? Quentin shook his head. What's that? Sign here, the driver said and handed over the tablet. Quentin hesitated as the guy held out a stylus. Come on, man. I promise I wiped it down. He gave a smile and a humored sigh. I know, the bug's going round. Nasty stuff. They say it gets you coming out both ends. Thanks, Quentin said and took the stylus. He still wasn't sure if he was hallucinating. After all, the journal was cranky with him. Cranky, he said out loud. What was that? Quentin waved him off and managed a patent charming smile and returned the stylus. The delivery jar clicked a few final buttons on his tablet, then nodded. Here you go, Mr. Devereaux. Enjoy. He handed Quentin the box, and Quentin was caught by surprise when it seemed to weigh as much as a cinder block. Hey, what's up with this? I have a house up the way, you know. The driver shrugged. I just make deliveries, Mr. Devereaux. I'm just a cog in the machine. Before Quentin could ask, the driver threw the truck into reverse and onto the highway. The car behind him slammed on its brakes and laid on the horn. Quentin's heart raced at the near miss, and he frowned at the car. The little junker Neon. He knew it was an enchant. It was his never to ask why at the absurdities of the world. Quentin tested the weight of the box. Definitely at least 20 or so pounds. He slipped into the truck on the passenger's floorboard. After getting back in the driver's seat, he sat there, rolling it over in his head. The curiosity got the better of him, and he tipped the box to check the address label. It was definitely for him. But the delivery address was the VIN number of his truck and the overlook location on GPS. What the fuck? Definitely something enchanted, he muttered as he hefted the box into his lap. Balancing the box between his stomach and the steering wheel, he slit the tape with his pocket knife. He took a breath and reached in to feel the classic satisfying texture of bubble wrap. He laughed. Ringo will have a field day with this. He wedged in his hand and nudged the block of bubble wrap onto the passenger seat. An envelope fell out of the box into his lap. Quentin blinked. His name was on it, all right, but no indication from whom. He sniffed at it and felt along for any residue. It seemed clean. He cautiously tore open the envelope and pulled out a blank parchment card. He gave an irritated toss of the head. Of course it had to be theatrical. Of course. He held the card to the light and saw only fibers weaving the old parchment together. This is so stupid. Say something, Quentin said. The words appeared in long curls of wet calligraphy ink. Seriously? This was by far the most ridiculous. Once upon a time, the card spelled out, there was a huntsman. Quentin threw the card as if it had burned him. He recoiled against the seat and grimaced against the bubble-wrap block. It couldn't be. It was just a present from Taylor. Honeysuckle and Ringo were in on it. It was his birthday, Taylor told him. He laughed at his unfounded fear. He can be such an idiot sometimes. Let's see, shall we? He said as he pulled the block onto his lap. He gleefully unwound the layers, and his forced cheer turned into worry, then concern that he shouldn't have, and finally the fear took tight hold on his mind. His terrifying gift taunted him from his lap. Another monstrous journal. Sealed with another bungee cord and duct taped, the composition notebooks kept the usual photos, receipts, and tabs, but bore dirty pages and pages scorched with scorched edges. The cover had been scraped with overlapping lines of a knife, more long burn marks, and a splatter of old blood along the spine. A few wisps of hair still stuck with the marks of violence. Acid rose in Quentin's throat. Did he beat someone to death with this one? What kind of person kept such a vicious, angry journal? Was this a lost piece of himself he longed to discover? Now here it was, ready to be opened. But he wasn't sure if he wanted to know. He closed his eyes and gripped the unfamiliar steering wheel. He took 3 deep breaths, trying to relax. This wasn't going to happen. Not now. Not for another 7 days. If he could hide the old journal on himself, if he didn't have to read it, none of it would be true. But it would still find him, just like the pen. He thumped his head on the steering wheel. Why can't you be simple, Henri? I hope you enjoyed the reading, and that is all I have to say about that. Please check out the book, and I hope you hung tight for the reading. Thank you. So I hope you check it out. I look forward to what you think, and don't forget about the giveaway down below, and have a chill. Bye.